Shunned by her family, she is now called Queen by the Alpha. The forest was quiet but not peaceful. A mist clung to the trees like a heavy veil, winding through the gnarled branches and dark undergrowth. Every step Alara took on the damp earth echoed in the stillness, reminding her that she was utterly alone. Her family had cast her out at dawn. A crowd had gathered in the courtyard of her ancestral home, their faces pale with judgment or curiosity. Whispers had followed her like shadows, cursed, dangerous, unworthy. Alara remembered the sting of their eyes, the sharpness of her father's words, and the hollow echo of her mother's tears not for her, but for their own shame. For the first time in her 17 years, she understood what it meant to truly have no one. Her home, once warm and familiar, had become a cage of secrets and accusations. And now she wandered into the unknown, carrying nothing but the clothes on her back and the bitter taste of exile. The wind stirred, carrying the scent of damp moss and something else, something wild. Alara shivered, pulling her cloak tighter around her shoulders. She did not know if she feared the forest or the possibility of what might be waiting for her beyond its edge. Her heart was a storm of confusion, anger at her family, sorrow for what she had lost, and a faint, strange hope she could not name. Hours passed. The sun dipped low behind the jagged mountains, painting the sky with shades of blood and gold. The forest seemed to grow darker with every step, shadows twisting like living things. She stumbled upon a small clearing where the mist seemed to recede slightly, revealing a pool of still water. Alara knelt and touched it, watching her own reflection blur and shift with the ripples. "Why me?" she whispered, the words carried away by the wind. She did not expect an answer, and yet for a moment it felt as if the forest itself had paused to listen. A sudden movement startled her. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall and imposing, yet quiet as the mist itself. Alara froze, unsure whether to run or to stay. The stranger stepped closer, his presence commanding yet strangely familiar, like a song she had forgotten she knew. "You should not be here," the man said, his voice deep, calm, yet carrying an edge that made the air itself shiver. Alara straightened, forcing courage into her voice. "I have nowhere else to go." The man's gaze was sharp, almost piercing. He seemed to look past her skin, past her clothes, past the fear, and see something deeper, something ancient. "Few survive these woods," he said. "Fewer still who are worth saving." I do not seek to survive," she replied, though her voice trembled. "I only wish to live." He studied her for a long moment, the shadows of the trees falling across his face. Then, without another word, he turned and walked deeper into the forest. Alara hesitated then, driven by a mix of fear and curiosity. She followed. The path was narrow and twisted, winding through cliffs and streams that sparkled under the moonlight. As they walked, Alara noticed strange markings etched into the bark of ancient trees, symbols she could not understand, but somehow felt drawn to. The air grew colder, the mist thicker, and yet she did not feel alone. After what felt like hours, they reached a fortress carved into the mountainside, dark stone walls rising like jagged teeth against the night sky. The stranger, Kalen, she would later learn, opened a massive gate with a gesture that required no key, no effort. It moved as if the stone itself knew him. Inside, the fortress was silent, but alive. Shadows danced across the high ceilings, and torches burned with a flame that seemed almost alive. Alara's heart pounded as she realized this was no ordinary place. It was a home built of power, of history, of secrets that had existed long before her family's accusations. "You will stay here," Kalen said, his eyes never leaving hers. "But know this, you are not a guest. You are under my protection and under my command." Alara bristled. "I am not yours to command. You will learn otherwise," he said, a shadow of a smile touching his lips. "Not because I demand it, but because you need it." She wanted to argue, to fight, but something in his presence silenced her. It was not fear alone. It was the sense that he knew her in ways no one else ever had, and that whatever fate had brought her here, it was not cruel by accident. That night, she lay in a small chamber carved from the mountain itself. The walls were cold, the bed hard, but she could hear the fortress breathing around her, the distant echo of footsteps, the whisper of stone, the murmur of unseen waters. Sleep came reluctantly, and in her dreams she saw visions of fire and shadow, of her family's faces twisted in anger, and of Kalen standing in the forest, waiting. When she awoke, the first light of dawn cut through the mist outside her window. Kalen was already waiting. He did not speak, but gestured for her to follow. They walked to a high balcony that overlooked the northern wilds. The land stretched endlessly, forests and mountains and rivers that glittered like silver veins. In the distance, storm clouds gathered, dark and heavy. "This land," Kaelin said finally, "is older than your family, older than your kingdom, older than you can imagine. It remembers the bloodlines, the magic, the curses. It knows who belongs and who does not." Alara swallowed hard. "And I belong here?" He turned, his gaze softening ever so slightly. "That is for you to discover, but know this, those who cast you out may have made a mistake, and perhaps fate has made another plan." For the first time since her exile, Alara felt a flicker of hope. Not a certainty, not a promise, but a fragile, trembling ember. Days passed. Kaelin taught her the ways of the fortress, the paths hidden in shadows, the rules of those who lived in its walls, and the whispers of creatures that stalked the night. Alara learned quickly, her mind sharp, her curiosity unyielding. And with every lesson, every glance, every unspoken word between them, the tension grew, an invisible thread pulled tight with longing and fear. Yet despite her growing skill, Alara could not shake the feeling of unease. At night, when the wind howled through the cliffs, she heard voices calling her name, not human voices, but something older, darker, echoing from deep within the forests. And sometimes she felt a power stirring inside her, a warmth and light and shadow that she could neither control nor understand. One evening, Kaelin led her to the edge of a cliff, overlooking a valley blanketed in mist. The moon rose above them, silver and pale. "You have strength you do not yet know," he said, "and a destiny that may terrify you." Alara's hands clenched at her sides. "I do not even know who I am anymore. How can I face a destiny I do not understand?" Kaelin stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, the steady beat of his pulse. "Because you are not alone," he said softly. "Because even the strongest storms can be weathered with someone at your side. And because I believe in you even when you do not." The words struck her with the force of a lightning bolt, and she felt a shiver run through her. For the first time, she understood that exile had not only taken her from her family, it had stripped her of certainty, leaving her raw and open to what fate, or Kaelin, might offer. A howl rose from the valley below, a sound wild and mournful, echoing through the mountains. Kaelin's expression darkened, and he placed a hand on her shoulder. "Come," he said, "there is more you must see. The night has eyes, and they are watching." Alara nodded, her fear mingling with excitement. She did not know what lay ahead, shadows, storms, curses, or perhaps even her own hidden power. But she knew one thing: she could not turn back. Her family's world had rejected her. The forest, the fortress, the Alpha, these were now her reality. And somewhere in the tangled threads of fate, she would find who she truly was, or be consumed trying. As they walked into the forest again, the mist curling around their feet, the night seemed to whisper promises she could not yet understand. And for the first time, Alara did not feel small. She felt chosen. The wind howled across the cliffs, carrying mist and secrets in equal measure. Alara stood at the balcony of the fortress, staring down at the valley shrouded in fog. Her heart still beat fast from the power that had stirred in her chest the previous night. She did not fully understand it, but she could not ignore it. Something within her had awakened, something ancient and wild. Kaelin approached silently, his presence as steady and commanding as the mountains themselves. His eyes, sharp and dark, scanned the valley, then returned to her. "You felt it," he said, almost a statement, not a question. Alara nodded, her hands trembling slightly. I don't know what it is. It feels like fire, but also like water, like wind and stone all at once." He studied her, his expression unreadable. "It is your blood," he said finally. "The power your family feared, the same blood they tried to bury with lies and shame." Alara looked away, guilt and anger twisting inside her. "They said I was cursed, and in their fear they made it real," Kaelin said softly. "But fear can never truly control what is meant to awaken." She met his gaze. There was something in his eyes, a mixture of command, understanding, and something more, something that made her pulse quicken. She did not know if it was trust or curiosity or something that would take years to understand, but she felt it stir deep within her. Kaelin gestured for her to follow. They walked through the fortress, corridors carved from black stone, torchlight flickering against the walls. Strange symbols glimmered faintly along the edges of doorways, the same markings she had seen in the forest. They seemed to hum with quiet power, almost as if the fortress itself were alive. "You must learn to control it," Kaelin said, his voice firm. not just for your safety, but for the safety of this land and for yourself. Elara swallowed hard. How? He stopped before a massive hall, the ceiling lost in shadow, the floor patterned with intricate runes. The first step is understanding. Power is not just strength, it is responsibility, and it is danger if left unchecked. Elara stepped forward hesitantly. As her foot touched the first rune, warmth spread up her leg, tingling and insistent. She gasped. Kalen placed his hand lightly on her shoulder. Focus, he said. Listen to it. Do not fight what rises inside you. Let it guide you, not control you. She closed her eyes, feeling the pulse of energy beneath her skin. The hall seemed to breathe around her, shadows shifting like living things. A voice echoed in her mind, not her own, not human, but soft and melodic, calling her name. Elara. She stumbled and Kalen's hand steadied her. Control it, he said. Do not let it overwhelm you. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time had lost meaning in the Hall of Runes. Finally, the energy receded, leaving her breathless, sweat on her brow and her heart hammering. You felt it, Kalen said. You have it in you, and it will only grow stronger. Elara looked at him, fear and awe mingling in her eyes. What if I cannot control it? You will, he said firmly. I will not let you fail. His gaze lingered on her, and for a moment the tension between them was tangible. Something unspoken passed in that space, a connection that went beyond words. But before either could speak, a low rumble shook the hall. The forest, Kalen muttered. It calls to you, and it will not be silent for long. They left the hall and returned to the balcony. Below, the mist swirled like living smoke, and shapes moved in the shadows. Wolves, perhaps, or something older, something that belonged to the wild. Elara shivered. I thought the forest was just trees and animals, she said, but it feels alive. Because it is, Kalen said, and it watches always. It knows those who have power, those who have destiny, and it tests them. Elara looked out over the valley, feeling both awe and fear. The wind tugged at her hair, and the mist wrapped around her like a cloak. She could feel her heartbeat echoing in the ground beneath her feet. Something was waiting for her out there, something she could not yet see. Kalen's hand brushed hers, a brief accidental touch and yet electric. She drew back, cheeks warming, and looked at him. He met her gaze, calm and steady, but something flickered in his eyes. Respect, admiration, something more. She could not tell, and the uncertainty made her pulse quicken. You are not like them, he said finally. Your family feared your power because they could not see it, because they could not understand it. But I do. Elara's chest tightened. Why? Why do you care? Kalen's eyes darkened. Because you are remarkable, and because the world does not often offer second chances. You are one, and I will not let it slip away. The words left her breathless. For years, she had believed herself unworthy, unloved, and powerless. Now, here in this fortress, in the presence of the Alpha who had saved her from the forest, she felt seen in a way she had never known. But the forest called again, a low howl that seemed almost human in its sorrow. Kalen's expression hardened. It waits, he said. And it tests all who enter this land. Elara swallowed, feeling both fear and determination. She would not run. She had survived her family's betrayal, survived exile, and survived the forest. She could survive this too. Kalen led her into another chamber, smaller and simpler, but filled with ancient tomes and artifacts. Knowledge is power, he said, and understanding is survival. You will learn the history of this land, the nature of the forest, and the forces you now carry within yourself. You must know them, or they will know you first. Days turned into weeks. Elara trained with Kalen, learning to read the runes, sense the energies in the forest, and understand the creatures that dwelled there. Each lesson was exhausting, each test a challenge to her courage and skill. And yet, with every moment, she felt herself growing stronger, more aware, more alive. Kalen was a patient teacher, but also demanding. He pushed her to her limits and sometimes beyond. And every time she faltered, he would steady her, guiding her with firm hands and quiet words. The tension between them grew, subtle and unspoken, like a string pulled tight. Elara found herself drawn to him, not just for his strength, but for the way he seemed to understand the darkness and light within her. One night, under the pale light of the full moon, Kalen took her to the edge of the forest. Shadows shifted among the trees, shapes moving with unnatural grace. Tonight, he said, you will face it, the forest itself. Elara's heart raced. Face it how? Alone? You will not be alone, Kalen said, but you must step into it willingly. The forest does not yield to fear. It will test you, tempt you, and challenge you. Only then will your power be true. She nodded, though her hands trembled. The mist curled around her feet as she stepped forward, Kaelin following closely. The trees seemed to lean toward her, their branches whispering secrets she could not understand. Shadows shifted and shapes moved just beyond her sight. A voice, faint and melodic, called her name, Elara, Elara. She could not tell if it was real or part of the forest's illusion, but she felt herself drawn toward it, and then, without warning, the ground beneath her shifted. She stumbled, and Kaelin's hand shot out to steady her. "Trust yourself," he said, "and trust me." She closed her eyes, breathing deeply. The energy within her pulsed, stronger now, like a heartbeat that matched her own. She reached out with her senses, feeling the forest around her, not just the trees, but the wind, the mist, the shadows. It was alive, yes, but it responded to her. A wolf emerged from the mist, eyes glowing faintly. It approached cautiously, sniffing the air. Elara froze, unsure if it was friend or foe. Kaelin stepped beside her, calm and unwavering. "You are part of this land now," he said. "The forest will test you, but it will also recognize you. You are no longer merely a girl exiled. You are something more." The wolf circled her once, then dipped its head in what seemed almost like respect, before retreating into the shadows. Elara's breath came fast, but she smiled, a mixture of relief and awe. Kaelin turned to her, eyes dark and unreadable. "You are stronger than you know, and this is only the beginning." Elara nodded, feeling a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration. For the first time, she did not feel helpless. She did not feel like a victim of fate or family. She felt alive. That night, as she lay in her chamber, her thoughts swirled with questions and emotions. She was learning, growing, and awakening to powers she had never imagined. And through it all, Kaelin's presence lingered in her mind, steady and strong like a beacon in the darkness. But the forest whispered still, soft and insistent, carrying secrets she could not yet grasp. And somewhere deep inside, Elara knew that the challenges ahead would test not just her power, but her heart. The first light of dawn barely touched the fortress walls, as if even the sun feared the darkness that had settled over the land. Elara paced in her chamber, her fingers tracing the edges of the old runes etched into the stone table before her. Her chest still pulsed with the energy that had awakened within her weeks ago. It was stronger now, insistent, like a storm trapped in her veins, and she could no longer ignore it. Kaelin appeared in the doorway, silent as always, his expression unreadable. Elara stopped pacing and looked at him. "It's different today," she said, her voice trembling. "I feel restless, dangerous maybe." Kaelin studied her, his eyes dark pools of concern and something else, something she could not name. "The forest is testing you," he said quietly. "Your power is no longer a spark. It grows, and with growth comes challenge. You must learn control or it will control you." Elara clenched her fists, frustration boiling inside her. "I try, I focus, I listen, and still it does what it wants." Kaelin stepped closer. "That is why you must not fight it alone. Trust is as important as power, Elara." "Trust yourself and me." She wanted to answer, wanted to speak the words she felt simmering in her heart, but the words tangled on her tongue. Instead, she nodded, though unease settled deep in her chest. The day passed in a blur of training and meditation. Kaelin guided her through the forest, teaching her to sense the energies in the land, to distinguish between life and shadow, and to call upon her own power without losing herself. Yet every step they took, every lesson, was shadowed by the knowledge that her family had tried to erase her. And worse, rumors reached the fortress, whispers carried on the wind, or through shadowy agents of her family who had not given up their attempts to control or destroy her. Elara's heart clenched as she realized the exile had not truly freed her. It had only begun a larger struggle. That night, the wind carried an unfamiliar chill. Elara sat on the balcony, gazing at the forest, its mist swirling like fingers reaching for the stars. Kaelin approached and leaned against the railing beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his presence. "The forest grows restless," he said, "and so do those who seek to harm you. Your family they have not forgotten, nor will they easily forgive the shame they believe you brought." Elara's voice was barely a whisper. "I am not ashamed of who I am." Kaelin's gaze softened, yet held a gravity that made her shiver. "I know, and that is why they fear you. But fear alone will not protect you. You must be ready to face them and yourself." Elara swallowed, feeling the weight of his words. She had grown stronger, yes, but the power inside her pulsed unpredictably. It whispered promises, offered glimpses of strength she could scarcely understand. And the forest, as Kaelin said, was not neutral. It observed, tested, and occasionally it punished. The next morning, Kaelin took her to a secluded grove deep in the heart of the forest. Sunlight barely pierced the thick canopy, but the air shimmered with faint, golden energy. "This is your trial," Kaelin said. "You must face what you carry fully and without hesitation. Only then will you understand its limits and its purpose." Alara's pulse quickened. "What if I fail?" "You will not," he said. "But you must confront the truth. Power is not only strength. It is temptation, responsibility, and sometimes fear. You must not fear yourself." She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. Closing her eyes, she reached deep within, calling upon the energy that had long slept inside her. At first, it surged wildly, uncontrollable, a raging storm that left her breathless. Then gradually she felt the rhythm of it, the pulse, the heartbeat that connected her to the forest, to the land, to the very air around her. A voice whispered, soft, melodic, and ancient, calling her name. Alara opened her eyes and saw shadows moving among the trees, dark forms that shifted with intention. Wolves, spirits, she could not tell, her pulse raced. "Focus," Kaelin said, stepping beside her. "Listen, not to them, but to yourself." She did, and slowly the shadows paused. The mist parted, revealing forms that no longer seemed threatening. Instead, they watched her almost reverently. Alara realized she could feel them, sense their thoughts, their fears, their respect. The storm inside her calmed slightly, leaving a warmth that spread through her chest. She had done it. She had faced the forest and not been consumed. But the energy pulsing inside her did not disappear. It remained, alive, insistent, waiting for the next challenge. Kaelin's eyes met hers. "You are stronger than I imagined," he said quietly, "and yet you are not ready for what is coming." Alara's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" He did not answer immediately. Instead, he led her back to the fortress in silence, his expression unreadable. That night, the air felt heavy, as if the very walls of the fortress were aware of the storm brewing beyond. Days later, the warning came. A rival alpha from a neighboring land, a man of cunning and cruelty, had arrived at the borders, claiming that Kaelin's bond with Alara violated ancient laws. He demanded her return or threatened war. Alara felt fear knotting her chest. She had survived exile, tamed her powers, and grown in strength, yet she realized she was not invincible. And the thought of losing Kaelin or having her newfound home threatened ignited something fierce and protective inside her. Kaelin stood beside her, calm as ever. "They will test us," he said, "but we will not falter. You must trust yourself and trust me." Alara nodded, feeling the tension between them grow. Their partnership had become something deeper than student and teacher. There was trust, yes, but also something more, something dangerous, silent, unspoken. She wanted to reach out to touch him, to speak the feelings that had grown like a quiet fire inside her. But fear held her back. The night of confrontation came. The rival Alpha approached with his warriors, and the forest seemed to grow darker in response, as if sensing the battle about to unfold. Alara stood at Kaelin's side, heart racing, her energy pulsing, ready to defend her home, her power, and the bond she shared with him. The rival Alpha sneered. "You claim a bond that is not yours," he said. "The girl is mine by law, by right, by blood." Kaelin's voice was cold as ice. "She is hers alone, and we will defend her or die trying." The battle was swift, a clash of strength and power that shook the forest itself. Shadows moved like living creatures, the mist curling and twisting, and Alara felt her energy surge uncontrollably. She called upon it, wielding the force within her with precision she had never known she possessed. The rival Alpha faltered, caught off guard by the girl he had underestimated. When the fight ended, silence fell over the forest. The rival Alpha had been forced to retreat, leaving Kaelin and Alara standing amid the swirling mist, the energy of the forest thrumming around them. Alara's chest heaved. I did it," she whispered. Kaelin stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. "Yes," he said softly. "And you are not done. The power within you will continue to grow, and soon it will demand choices you cannot yet imagine." She looked up at him, feeling a mixture of awe, fear, and something she could not name. I don't know if I am ready." Kaelin's gaze softened, and for a moment the tension between them became almost unbearable. "You are ready," he said quietly. "Not because the forest says so, not because your enemies say so, but because you must be, and because I believe in you." Alara's breath caught. She wanted to speak, to tell him everything, to reach out and touch the connection that had grown between them. But the moment passed, leaving her with only the warmth of his presence and the knowledge that the trials ahead would test more than her strength. They would test her heart. That night, as she lay in her chamber, the energy pulsing within her stronger than ever, Alara knew that the true battle had only just begun. The rival Alpha had retreated, yes, but threats lingered everywhere. Her family, the forest, the forces she could not yet control. And Kalen, who had become both her guide and her anchor, was no longer simply a protector. He was a part of her journey, a force entwined with her destiny. And somewhere deep inside, Alara felt the forest's eyes watching, waiting for the moment her power would demand its ultimate test. The storm rolled across the mountains, dark clouds churning like restless spirits. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the fortress with brief, blinding flashes. Alara stood at the balcony, her cloak whipping around her as the wind tore through the battlements. The pulse inside her chest had grown stronger, demanding attention, and she could no longer ignore it. Kalen appeared behind her, silent as always. He placed a hand on her shoulder, steady and grounding. "The forest knows," he said quietly. "It senses the trials to come. And so does your power." Alara drew a deep breath, trying to calm the storm within her. "I've faced so much already, the forest, the rival Alpha, my own fear, but now it feels different, stronger, like it's waiting for me to fail." Kalen turned to her, eyes soft but firm. "You will not fail, not because you are fearless, but because you are not alone. Trust in yourself and in what we have built together." Alara's lips parted, words caught in her throat. She wanted to say more, to tell him everything she felt, but the energy thrumming through her made speech impossible. Instead, she nodded, her gaze returning to the storm below. The night descended fully, and with it, a darkness unlike any she had felt before. Shadows stretched unnaturally from the forest, curling around the valley like fingers reaching for the sky. She felt the pulse in her chest respond, almost as if it were a heartbeat matching the storm itself. Kalen took her hand. "Tonight you will learn the full measure of your power," he said. "But be warned, power demands sacrifice, courage, and clarity of heart. You will need all three." They descended into the forest together. The mist had thickened, curling around their feet and hiding the shapes that lurked in the shadows. Alara could sense them, wolves, spirits, creatures older than memory, but she no longer feared them. She could feel her own strength responding, reaching out to the life in the forest, and shaping it into something she could guide. Suddenly, the ground trembled. A dark form emerged from the mist, a creature of shadow and flame, taller than any man, its eyes glowing with a light that seemed to pierce the soul. It roared, a sound that shook the air and echoed across the valley. Alara's pulse raced. She could feel the energy inside her surge, matching the roar, and for the first time she realized that this force was not separate from her. It was part of her. It had waited all these weeks, growing, demanding, testing. Kalen stood beside her, unwavering. "Do not fear it," he said. "Embrace it, control it, and it will obey. Fear it, and it will consume you." Alara closed her eyes, reaching inward. The pulse within her expanded, filling her veins, her mind, her very soul. The forest seemed to respond, the mist lifting slightly, and the shadowed creature halted, sensing the power rising within her. She opened her eyes, and in that moment she was no longer a girl who had been shunned. She was something new, strong, aware, and unbroken. She lifted her hands, and the energy that had threatened to overwhelm her now flowed through her like water, controlled and purposeful. The creature roared again, advancing, but Alara stepped forward. She did not strike with anger nor with fear. She spoke not with words, but with the power itself, calling to the shadow, bending it, guiding it. The creature paused, then bowed, submitting to the command of her will. Kalen's eyes widened slightly, pride and admiration flickering across his face. "You have done it," he said softly. "You have claimed it, and now you are ready." Alara's chest heaved with the effort, sweat on her brow, but she smiled. The storm around them seemed to respond, lightning flickering across the sky, thunder rolling like applause. She felt alive in a way she never had before. But the night was not yet over. The rival Alpha, enraged by his earlier defeat, had gathered new forces. From the shadows of the valley, figures approached, soldiers, hunters, and creatures twisted by fear and envy. They moved with precision, intent on capturing or destroying what they could not understand. Kalen placed a hand on her shoulder. "Together," he said, "we stand as one, your power and mine, we are stronger together." Alara nodded, feeling the bond between them solidify. Their connection was no longer merely teacher and student, protector and charge. It was partnership, respect, and trust forged through trials and danger. And beneath it all, something deeper pulsed quietly, like the roots of a tree spreading through the earth. The battle began. Energy surged through Alara as she moved, precise and deliberate, using her power to protect and defend. Shadows twisted and flared, but she guided them, shaping them into shields and barriers, holding back the rival Alpha's forces. Kalen fought beside her, his strength unmatched, yet every strike they shared was synchronized, unspoken communication born of trust and understanding. At the height of the confrontation, the rival Alpha charged, wielding dark energy of his own. Alara stepped forward, heart pounding, pulse in harmony with the storm. She called upon the power that had been growing inside her, not with anger but with clarity and purpose. A brilliant wave of light and energy surged from her, forcing the rival back, unbalancing him and leaving him vulnerable. Kalen seized the opportunity, using his strength to subdue the Alpha. Together they stood victorious, the forest and storm around them calming as if acknowledging the balance restored. Alara sank to her knees, exhausted but exhilarated. Her power had grown, yes, but it was tempered by control and understanding. She was no longer the girl shunned and cast aside. She was something greater, a leader, a force, a queen in her own right. Kalen knelt beside her, lifting her chin gently. "You have done more than survive," he said softly. "You have ascended. And in doing so, you have claimed not just power but destiny." Alara's lips trembled, not from fear but emotion. "And what about us?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Kalen's gaze softened, shadows flickering in the torchlight. "We have always been more than teacher and student," he said. "More than protector and ward, we are partners in strength, in heart, in fate. And now nothing can take that from us." She reached out, touching his hand, feeling the warmth and steady pulse beneath her fingers. For the first time in her life, she felt wholly seen, wholly understood. Her family's rejection, the exile, the forest, the trials, all had led her here. And she knew deep in her heart that she had not only survived, she had thrived. The rival Alpha and his forces had been defeated, the forest recognized her strength, and Kalen's unwavering presence had become a cornerstone of her confidence. And yet, she knew the journey was never truly over. Power, after all, was a living thing, demanding, testing, and shaping those who wielded it. As dawn broke over the mountains, painting the sky with soft pinks and golds, Alara and Kalen stood on the balcony together, hands intertwined. The valley below was calm, mist lifting, shadows retreating. The forest was alive, yet respectful, acknowledging the bond between the girl and the Alpha. "You are ready," Kalen said. "Not because the world is safe, but because you are strong enough to face it. And together we can face anything." Alara smiled, feeling the weight of her past lift, replaced by the certainty of her future. "Then let's face it," she said, "together." The wind carried their words across the mountains, rustling the trees and stirring the mist. Somewhere in the distance, the forest seemed to hum in response, as if acknowledging that a new chapter had begun. Alara was no longer the shunned girl. She was queen of her own destiny, master of the power she had once feared, and bound to Kalen not just by circumstance, but by trust, loyalty, and something deeper, something that neither storms nor shadows could undo. And as they looked out over the world, side by side, she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as one. The storms might come, the shadows might rise, and the forest might test her again, but she was ready. Because she had survived, she had grown, and she had claimed her place in the world. And now, with Kalen at her side, nothing could break what they had built. Power tempered by wisdom, love forged in trials, and a bond that would endure beyond the shadows and storms. The future stretched before them, uncertain yet full of promise. And for the first time, Alara felt not fear but hope, steady, powerful, and alive.